I'm actually going to kick things off with a poll. And I know I'm jumping the gun because we have this later on in a section, but I would love to know a little bit more about the people who are joining us. This is now popped into the screen there, but if you could answer this poll and let us know, do you have an e-commerce website? Do you operate one? Do you manage some for clients? Let us know what your relation is to the topic today.
I'm interested to see this.
Yeah. Very cool. So it looks like we have about 50% of people responded that they operate an e-commerce store, 75% I build e-commerce websites, and another 50% say I maintain e-commerce sites. And the reason why these numbers are a little bit odd is because I allowed people to answer because more than one, to choose more than one answer, because it could be that you build them, that you maintain your own, that it's yes to a lot of these. And nobody on the call does not have an e-commerce store. So Mitchell, we have the right audience for this webinar, and I'm hopeful that all of these tips will be very applicable and practical for the people in this webinar. So it's awesome. 12:34 Eastern, so let's kick things off officially. Welcome everyone to this Black Friday themed webinar. My name is Andrea, and I am the head of growth at Kinsta. You can find me on Twitter here, Andrea Zollner. But I am not the star of the show today. Mitchell Callahan from SoCal is here with us. He is a fellow Canadian. We are both from the Great White North. But Mitchell, you're actually from a territory, which is fairly rare. I don't know that many people from the Canadian territories. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm from a place called Yellowknife. It's in the Northwest Territories. I think there's like 50,000 people in total who live up there, but it's very far north, very cold. But we get some cool stuff like the Northern Lights and really long days in the summer.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about your history with WordPress, with WooCommerce. You are the CEO of SoCal, which is a very well-respected and successful agency in the industry. How did you come to found this, and what's your story?
Yeah, for sure. Well, as you mentioned, I'm from up north, and it's an interesting time. When I was a child, the internet just kind of first came out, and for me, it was very isolated. I didn't have a lot of access to things that like people in a big city center would. So I really gravitated towards the internet because it kind of gave me access to opportunities that wouldn't otherwise be available. And so fast forward in university, I was pretty comfortable with these things, and I ended up creating like my own university network. And long story short, but it led me to meet my business partner, and he had a really different experience in life. He grew up in a hotel, and rather than kind of going to the world kind of came to him. And so we kind of had this mutual, like, I guess, bond over the internet. And so, we started this company together, and we started using WordPress, I don't know, maybe, 10 years ago or so. And we started using WooCommerce maybe 8 years ago. That was shortly after it launched. And yeah, we've kind of haven't looked back. We only work on WooCommerce. We're big proponents of the open internet, just kind of with our history. And here we are.
That's awesome. It almost sounds like this is like a Canadian version of Facebook when you said you started a network, a digital network at school.
Yeah, and it was interesting. It was a different time back then.
That's awesome. So can you just quickly tell me about how SoCal has grown in the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, WooCommerce has definitely moved more upstream. So what that means is just there's bigger companies that are using it. Larger companies are paying more attention to it. And that just means it's getting things ready for the prime time. So it's really been about scaling WooCommerce, making it very performant and very easy to use, and working very closely with the WooCommerce team, as well as, with our customers to make sure that it's solid, stable, reliable, and something that they can use for the next decade or more.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's get into the topic because I know that we don't have a lot to cover. So first off, let's talk about leading your team into Black Friday. So you're a leader of a team, you run an agency, and you probably have a lot of advice about not only preparing your website or your business, but really leading your company as a whole as you prepare for one of the busiest shopping seasons of the year.
Yeah, 100%. And so I just want to start off by saying it's really easy to think about this as like a checklist of items, but the problem with that is you can kind of get caught up in the mundane and it seems kind of boring. So I want you to take like a big picture, holistic view of all this thing. And whether you're building your business or you're helping someone build theirs, um, just realize that this is about being a leader. And so I'm going to kind of help you, give you some mental shifts to move away from, completing tasks and more thinking about being a leader. And so the first thing, kind of like you're saying, leading your team, I want you to think like a captain. And so what does that mean? Is it means like you got to be the leader that you're looking for. And I'll give you an example. Like you need to know your mission. Like why are we even doing this in the first place? Like we're not doing it for fun. We're doing it because you want your store to be successful and you want your customers to have an amazing experience at the end of Black Friday. And if they do, that means they'll keep coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. What does leadership mean to you specifically?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you like being a leader, you kind of got to be like the most reasonable person in the room. And what does that mean? It means like a couple of things. Like you need to know your timeline. I know we're a little bit late. Black Friday's around the corner, but like you should be planning these types of things normally about 3 months out, not and 1 month at the latest. Like because like we had one customer, for example, and they were very honest about it, but like they were like running a very old version of WooCommerce. Like 4 or 5 of the most important plugins that they use for success were outdated, and they knew like coming this Black Friday that things wouldn't work. And so they're like, we need to get this done. And at least they were honest. We got things done, and there were hiccups along the way. But like 1 month is pushing it. I'd say give yourself at least 3 months.
Yeah, I have to admit that this webinar is full of good advice. That's maybe we're a little bit late to apply some of the bigger items, like if you want to do a whole website redesign. So where does your team kind of skills and who makes up your team come into play when you are down to the wire? Like, let's say that people want to come and make changes to their website this week, next week. How do you build a team that's really going to help you get there?
Yeah, an excellent question again, because like when you're a leader, it's all about your team. And so, we've done the planning and the timeline. Now with your team, I think really at this point, like where we are now, it's going to be your hosting provider. Hosting is pretty much number one. And you're going to have a developer or someone who knows kind of what's happening behind the scenes if something bad happens, and really your customer support, because they're going to be front and center during this Black Friday. And so as part of your team, it's knowing who they are, but knowing how to communicate with them. So, if something happens during, on the holiday, how do we get a hold of Kinsta? And, how is your customer support going to be getting a hold of your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of preparing for the worst. So if we think about preparing our website, that can feel like a checklist. I know we're not supposed to think of things just as a to-do, but what are some things that you recommend people should do leading up to kind of the high traffic season?
Yeah, so definitely think about the worst case things. So, with their hosting, make sure you got your backups in place, and really think about what's going to happen if you get more visitors. So, like, look at what plan you are on with Kinsta. Like, is it something that you can scale with? You can't always predict what those numbers are going to be, but like assume 10 or 100x, whatever it may be. So get your hosting in place, and more so like with your website, make sure your WooCommerce and your WordPress versions are on the latest versions, and like test it. So get this done now if you haven't done it already. And, there's a lot of other low hanging fruit you can do too, like compress all your images. And I think the big one is really focus on speed.
Yeah, focusing on speed is something a lot of people should do, regardless of whether it's an e-commerce store or a business store, because there's so many benefits, right? Like if you have a fast website, Google likes it better because they rank your website higher. And also your customer likes it better because things don't take a million years to load. And, I keep pretty close tabs on things like Instagram updates, and, they're really trying to get people to stay in there in their app for shopping. But when you want people to go to your website, the last thing you want is for something to take forever to load on your phone. Like that's the easiest way to lose a customer, right? People shop impulsively, I think, more than we expect. And so website speed is so important to the success of your shopping site.
Yeah, and there's like a really great tool you can use. It's called Google PageSpeed Insights. It uses their Lighthouse tool on the back end. And if you pop off on the next slide, I'll give you a little clip. Some of the things to think about, like it's only perceived speed. Like the website needs to feel fast. It doesn't necessarily have to load like everything at once. So a really important metric is like time to first byte. That's like, time it takes to get the first little bit loaded, and really time to interactive, like when I can actually start moving around. A lot of other things can actually be delayed or deferred. So we do these things where we do prefetching. So like if you hover over a link, I know that like, okay, you're probably interested in going there. You can actually start loading those assets in advance. So it's really fast. But nonetheless, if you take a look at this slide here, don't get bogged down about this number too much. Some people, they obsess over it. They're like, oh my God, I need like 99, whatever. It's a weighted average. So take that into account. And if you're over like 90, I can't remember the exact number, you're like better than like, you're in like the top 2% of sites or something. So like, don't beat yourself up over this. But really, if you're not a developer, if you are a developer, like page speed will be pretty straightforward. But if you're not, really take a look. There's a section called opportunities. And if you kind of like do those few key items, I think it'll do, like it'll help you a lot. And it'll be some easy wins to make your site really fast.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're saying about, optimizing your website for speed isn't just for developers. I think anyone can do it. I run a blog. I'm not a developer, and I've done some things on my own to improve my website speed. Compressing images is a huge one. I had some issues with some plugins that were slowing down my site, and that was, I could, some of these tools like Google PageSpeed was able to help me diagnose that. But, and something else I want to mention is actually today at Kinsta, we just launched something called the APM, which is the Application Performance Monitoring Tool. Ooh. And you can use that. Yeah, this is good timing. You can use that to also see kind of what are the PHP things that are going on? What are some of the issues that might be slowing down your website? And if you're a developer, you work with a developer, you can send that information to them, and it can really help them dig into some of those issues.
That's awesome. And yeah, and like some really, like if you're not a developer, like some of the things that you think about are your plugins, like you said, use some trusted plugins, and your theme. Your theme is really going to be the big resource hog. So like unfortunately, a lot of WordPress themes aren't necessarily built for performance. So maybe try and seek out ones that are, or at least like they're minimalist themes, because they're usually quicker.
Yeah. Okay. So final question on this topic, because I have to ask, tell me a little bit about maybe some clients that you've had in the past, and do you have any stories to share about an overhaul you had to do, and about some of the websites that you absolutely turned around, and some success stories?
Yeah, 100%. Like it's oh man, well, okay. First thing, I'm thinking about some of the sites where our customers are obsessed with like the fractions of seconds, and so we can talk about those. But yeah, it's amazing. Like I'm thinking about one customer. I don't like to share all the information, but like you can get them down from 3-4 seconds down to below 1 second. And in fact, we have some that load below 1 second for every single page, and those ones could be highly technical, and I forgive me because that's usually what we're working on. But like I have like another customer, for example, Greg. He loves to be super interactive and hands-on, and he's constantly tinkering with himself, and even just using some of these like good plugins and extensions, he was able to get his page speeds scored just to above 90. So like yeah, it's like there's a lot of different ways, but it's amazing at how quick you can do it. And if you want to get some monetary metrics, like some of these customers we've worked with in the last year, they've more than doubled their revenue. Some of them have tripled. And depending on your size, that can mean millions of dollars. I don't want to attribute it all to, just some performance upgrades. But if you look at where they are and to where they are now, that's like it's an amazing jump that can be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So, speed is important, but speed isn't everything when it comes to the UX of your website, especially when it comes to e-commerce, when there's so many different flows in the checkout, in the down to the emails people get? What can you do to your website to make sure that as a customer, people are enjoying interacting with your brand, with your website, and with your e-commerce store?
Yeah, and so like if we're thinking about the 5 point shift here as like a leader, we're talking about like thinking like a captain, and then like really preparing your battleship, or preparing your tools. And the third part here is like really like do some reconnaissance. And this
Mm-hmm.
is all about empathy. This is really stepping into your customer's shoes and feeling what it's like for them to work with you. And I'll give you an example. Like there was one of my favorite companies, they make
Yeah.
suitcases, and they had this crazy sale like several months back, and it far exceeded their expectations. And the problem is I went to add a product to cart, it would time out, I ended up checking out, and some things weren't available. Next thing you know, I look at my credit card statement, and I had double charges, and I was like, oh my god, this is a hot mess. But and it was hard to get a hold of their customer service, but like they made everything right, and they really thought about what it was like to be in my shoes. And so like they got everything fulfilled, they sent it out, they ended up giving me a coupon code, so I came back and bought more. And I was really happy. And they're just a good example of like thinking about what it's like to be in my shoes. So like from a UX perspective, it does translate into some UX things and some experience things, but like really think about a person using the site. So uh, for Black Friday, like make sure like customer service information is like front and center. It's
Mm,
really easy to find. Because like if something goes wrong, like you don't want like your Twitter blown up with people yelling at you. Like
yeah.
just make your customer service, like our team member is easily available. Um, I really like when people highlight what's on sale and really tell me what I'm saving. Like when I don't want to go to a website and have to navigate and sift through a bunch of pages to find the deals. Like I want to know
Mm,
up front what it is. Some other ones, like I really want my shipping costs to be very clear. If you can, give me estimated costs up front. And a big one is, and this one's a little bit more technical, but it's really having your inventory up to date. Because like
mhm.
if your inventory isn't ready, you don't want people to like check out and then realize that, oh, there's not enough available. So make sure your inventory is up to date. And I can dive into some more advanced tools that we do with that, but I think foremost, just make sure that that stuff is all kind of ready to go.
Yeah. Something that I like to recommend to people who are kind of a one person operation is to get people to test, like get your friends to go through your website, to highlight things that are confusing, and to answer all the questions that they might have before they're asked. Things like,
Mm.
what's the return policy? If you can make that like part of the checkout experience so people don't have to navigate away from the checkout, that's gold, because you keep them in that process and closer to actually giving you their credit card information. And things like the shipping. I mean, living in Canada, people don't realize how much shipping is a pain for us. We have a huge country, a huge territory, and not that many people, so we always have to pay for duties and shipping and all of that. So that's super important for us as consumers. And something that I look at a lot also is the micro copy in websites and in UX.
Mm.
So, just when you navigate through a checkout, do you have consistent wording about your cart, about your products? When you talk about colors, is it like, are you saying different colors and using different terms for things around the website? Like it's important to kind of make sure that your customers have as few questions as possible as they check out.
That's awesome points. And yeah, it's true. Like that micro copy's got to be really reassuring and getting them through. And yeah, and like you said with the return policy, I always look, what is the return policy? And in Canada, I'm always like, am I going to pay duties on this or not? And
Yeah,
if it's shown, I'm like really happy because I'm like, it's clear. And if
yeah.
it's not, I kind of like, oh, I got to send a ticket. I'm like, does this include duties or not? And so yeah, that's always great stuff. And another thing too is like you want to think about what's going to happen after Black Friday. So I always like to think
Mm,
about like what's your baby come back strategy or whatever. And
yeah.
it's abandoned cart's a great one because like a lot of people are probably going to add something to the cart, and who knows, like
Mhm.
they might be on another site, maybe something else pops up in life and they forget. So that way, at least you're still nurturing them. And maybe if you do sell out of products, have back orders set up so that they could still buy it, and they'll come back to your store.
Yeah. Do you have any advice? I know this is a little bit outside of the technical side of websites, but for people trying to determine their pricing, how deep they
Mm.
should set their discounts, whether they should have any sort of like 2-for-1, what advice do you have maybe for an entrepreneur who's trying to navigate like just how crazy to go for Black Friday?
And that's a good question. And it's pricing is an art in itself, and we're constantly trying to perfect that on our side. So I'm not the best person to ask. We're on the technical side for sure, but I'm always about in business like knowing your numbers. So know how much you can sell things for without losing your shirt for one.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's a loss leading product, and you've got your information to know like if they buy this, they'll buy other ones. So yeah, do your research and make sure it's something you can afford to do. Because I think about all those horror stories I've like years ago when people did like those Groupons and stuff, and like
Yeah.
I'd go to businesses and they sold so many of those, and like I can't keep up with this. Like, and so I just don't want you to be in a horror story like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. Even, I was at a restaurant recently and they were like, thank you so much for not ordering through DoorDash. We actually make zero, we lose money with DoorDash because of fees, because our prices are just not set properly for that kind of thing. So it's definitely a good warning for people.
Yeah, and especially during this time, like I tend to be a little bit extra generous just because I know some people, especially retailers, could be struggling. So, maybe even this Black Friday, they could be seasoned online sellers, or maybe it's their first time. So, go easy on them.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So we've talked about optimizing the speed, optimizing the UX. Now it's down to testing, testing, testing. And I put that 3 times because it's so important. And Away was such a perfect example. I'm so glad you brought that up because that actually, like, I'm a big fan of Away as well. And that made industry news of that issue of, I think it was like a caching issue with the carts. And so, I mean, they turned it around with some excellent customer support and some pretty proactive outreach to the people that were, stuck in that situation. But how can you prevent these things from happening?
Yeah. So this is one part of like that I really enjoy doing, and it's really I like to think of it like as your leadership shift, like put things through a simulator.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so before we do a lot of load testing, but even before you do that, just like a really simple thing everyone should be doing is check all of your flows. Like add a product to a cart, kind of like you said, you get your friends to do a checkout, use a
Mm-hmm.
coupon, do a password recovery. And check that your analytics pixels are firing. So if you're using, Facebook or Google Analytics, make sure that data is going through because you don't want to look like after the holidays and realize none of your data pass, and you're going to be like, oh snap, like we don't have any insights into our success. So that's a really simple one. On the other hand, we like to do like simulated like shopping experiences. So you can do this a couple of ways. There's like kind of a back end test, which really just tests how like how much processing power your servers have. But then you can
Mm-hmm.
really do like some front end tests, which really all that is, it's like, how we asked your friend to do like a test. This is just
Mm-hmm.
programming the machine to do it, but on a much bigger scale. So we like to test at least 10x, sometimes 100x what we think we would get, because you never know. And we have one customer, again, I won't say their name, but we do this often because what happened was their site went down after they had a huge sale. And when that happens, it can leave really bad taste in people's mouth. You might lose customers permanently. You might it's not, it's like it could be really devastating. So this one thing can save you a whole lot of grief. So backend tools, like for testing the processing, we use something called Apache JMeter, which is cool. And then on the front end, we use something called flood.io, as well as some custom tools we have. And again, all that's really doing is kind of testing the front end performance. And since it's actually, it essentially just spins up a bunch of browsers and behaves like a human. And the reason why that one's really helpful is because it actually tests like the load on your server, because they're pulling the images and they're pulling kind of all the data that a customer would be doing. And it really shows you when things start to fail. If you go to the next slide, I can show you a screenshot.
Yeah, that's so cool. I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, so this one's flood, and you'll see there's kind of different. It might be hard to see. I apologize, but it shows there's kind of like different steps, like adding to cart, proceeding to checkout, placing order, and we're seeing kind of the concurrency here transaction rates and when things really start failing.
Mm.
And this thing is so useful because on this exact customer, we they had a follow up sale after we did some work, and it all went swimmingly. I mean, you're always nothing's going to be 100%. There's a couple of errors, but nonetheless, it was this tool that really saved the day.
Yeah, that's really cool. And would you recommend using a tool like this before Black Friday to assess kind of what kind of hosting package that you should be on?
Yeah, hosting's definitely going to play a big part. It's really going to tear apart your whole site. So you're going to know like where you need to upgrade your hosting, different things that your hosting offers. Like for a lot of these things to work on WordPress, you need Redis. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
some of your basic hosting packages aren't going to cut it. You're going to need more advanced hosting configurations, which I always recommend. Um, but yeah, it's going to be your hosting. It's going to dive into some of the code. It's going to show you where you really need to improve,
Yeah.
which is great. It's kind of like hitting the gym. You're just going to get stronger.
Yeah. Um, and it's not too late to do this kind of testing, right? And we've talked about some more bigger projects that might take more time, but something like just testing and seeing where your website needs quick fixes, you could do that a couple days before Black Friday.
You could, yeah. And again, like anything's better than nothing. It's just that if it's going to take time to make changes. So I really don't recommend, you could do some testing, but I don't recommend diving too deep into the code so close. Like one thing I always like to do is a code freeze and, get it
Mm-hmm.
to a state that it's working and then don't touch it because like your focus now is on the customer experience and getting those checkouts, doing your fulfilling or whatever it is. And don't be playing with any code. So
Yeah, that's good advice. I mean, that's,
yeah.
yeah, code freezes or something in feature releases and project redesign projects. Like that's website redesigns. That's always good advice to kind of set a deadline for that.
100%.
Yeah. Um, awesome. So for people who might not be able to provide really, really deep discounts or, 2-day shipping, compete with some of these big retailers that can ship worldwide for free. What are some other things they can do on their site for their business to really create a sense of loyalty and investment in their business? I mean, one thing that we've spoken about is turning your customers into a community. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and kind of like the fifth shift, like for a leader, like gather the troops and really know who your allies are, because um, customers kind of don't really see themselves as customers. More often than not, they resonate with your brand and they feel like they're a part of a community. So, like for example, I'm part of there's a service online that I buy a lot of, and I'm part of the like inner circle more or less. And so every time there's a Black Friday or there's a special product launch, they always let me know first. And I feel awesome because it's like, sweet, I know this is going to sell out and I get first dibs. So like always kind of like treat your customers like insiders. So activate them, send them advance notice on their newsletter, or let them know on social or something, because they'll really act as like your unofficial sales team.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I don't think I've been on a website recently that didn't have some sort of referral system, like, give $20, get $20. And
Mm.
it's even if $20 is like 10% of the cost of the item, it's still incentive enough that I'm like, oh yeah, who can I spam who could I send this referral code to get them to buy?
And yeah, you love it too, because it's like when someone asks you your opinion on something, like you want to make sure you give a good one. And like, I don't know, maybe a long time ago it'd be kind of spammy, but like you send your referral code, man. You both win, and yeah, that's great advice. Like the referral system always works well too. So just another way to activate them, and so they fight and work on your behalf.
Yeah. Um, so at SoCal, do when you think about your portfolio of customers of e-commerce sites, can you share maybe the breakdown of like, are they retail? Are they digital products? Like what kind of e-commerce websites are they?
Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag. So we specialize really in WooCommerce. We don't have like a specific vertical we work in. We work a lot of digital products. So sometimes that means they sell like software for mixing music. So or
Mm-hmm.
they sell like instruction on how to do something in particular. But then we also have, consumer businesses that sell, deodorant.
Mhm.
So they all kind of share similar challenges nonetheless. So yeah, it's really a mixed bag. And for us, it's all an interesting experience working with them all. But the challenges are more or less similar, and that's how we're able to help them all.
Yeah. So what are some plugins or some WooCommerce extensions that are non-negotiables for you that you install on almost every website that you build or that you work with?
Um, Without a plugin, I would say like well, subscriptions is really popular. A lot of people always kind of want to figure out a subscription model. That's always nice for
Mhm.
recurring revenue. But the one thing that's really non-negotiable for us is our hosting. And I'm not saying that just because I'm on a hosting webinar, like a webinar with Kinsta. It's like for WooCommerce in particular, you get a lot of responsibility because you own the code base. And the best service you can do to your store is give it the resources it needs to thrive. And so, like, we are very particular about where they host.
Mhm. That's interesting. So I've spoken to a couple of different agency owners and maintenance providers and things like that over the last couple of webinars. And that's something that they've mentioned before is that, as a service provider, as an expert that's being hired to provide their opinion, getting people on the right hosting is not only good for the customer, but it's good for your relationship moving forward too, because there's only so much you can do for performance if your customer's not willing to move hosts.
Yeah, and a lot of great things have been like automated now. So like if you think about something like that's very simple on Kinsta, like creating a backup, like you're literally clicking one button. Whereas if
Mhm.
we didn't have that infrastructure, it takes us a lot of time. So instead of spending our time, making improvements to your store or building out new features, we're doing it like doing these tasks which have largely been automated. And if you think about it in the long term, if a better hosting costs more money, you're actually losing it in other ways.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I mean every second. I mean, there's so many studies about this, right? The number of seconds versus the number of dollars that you lose when your website's super slow.
And it's just peace of mind. Like, my God, it's so much easier if something happens. Like, we can just take a backup or spin up a staging server to test, and like it's just good practice. And I always think about like just go back to where things they are, but where they used to be. And like if you go into a retail store, I'm gonna have someone who comes and greets me and like says hello, and they're going to call someone to check some stock in the back, and then I'm going to check out. They're going to do it at the till. Like, imagine that at scale. If you have 1,000 or 10,000 people, what that would look like in real life versus on a computer. And like that computer is doing a lot of work for you. So
Mhm.
like what it does relative is it is so worth it. So like make sure you get a good one, because like even like a 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 a month, that's a fraction of what it would cost to get all those people in that space to get that amount of work done.
Yeah, that's such a good reminder of really when we're talking about e-commerce, at the scale at which we're operating. I mean, there's a reason why people are going online, moving their stores online, shutting down their brick and mortar stores. I mean, independent of COVID, is just because you get that scale, you get that reach, and you can just sell to so many more people simultaneously.
Yeah, bigger audience, and it's more convenient for me. Like I don't need to go into the store. I can, go shopping at 12 a.m. when you'd normally be closed, and I can do some research. And like if you even think about like from a physical landscape, I sometimes think when I go to Home Depot and I'm like, oh, I'm looking at lights, and now I need to go check out the lumber, and it's, I don't know, like 100, 200 meters away. Whereas like when I'm on the shop, it's just a link and it's a click, and I'm there in 1 second. I'm like, this is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good reminder that your store should be really well organized and that your related products should be really easy to see. That if someone's shopping for something, that your search is really powerful. Do you have any other tips for just like organizational structure in an e-commerce store?
Yeah, like those ones you mentioned, like make sure things are really well organized. There's nothing worse than when you show up and you can't find what you're looking for. So I like a lot of faceted search, so things I can really drill down and like get the results I want. I find like customers who do that on their stores really well. I like them, and it's going to be very specific to the industry you're in. Like for my clothing companies, like not everyone does this, but like I love when they let me filter by size or
Mm,
like, so then I'm only looking at shirts that are my size, or I'm only looking at pants that are my size. So then I'm like, I don't find something I really like and realize, oh snap, they don't have it.
Yeah, that is super disappointing, but that can also be an opportunity to get someone to sign up to your newsletter to get like a notification when it's back in stock.
100%, and always do that because I hit that up every time.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like empty states, triggers, and cart abandonments, and just like newsletter discounts. All these things are just ways to get people onto your email list, which is such a huge way to carry on that the success of Black Friday onto the rest of the year.
100%. And you got to look at like lifetime value of the customers. So this is a good time to get a lot of customers. Also delight your existing ones, but
Mm,
definitely play the long game for sure.
yeah. All right, I'm gonna look over to the Q&A here. If you guys have questions, please pop them in the Q&A. We have a couple more minutes here to chat through the questions that you have. The first one that I have here is, what is the best tool or plugin for image compression and optimization for a WordPress website?
Yeah, one that I use often, it's called Tiny PNG.
Mm,
There's also another one, Compress Images by, I believe they're called Short Pixel. And those ones are, free plugins. They'll usually add like depending on how many images you need to compress, they'll do a paid plan, but they'll give you like like a free batch, and they work great. And then you get into a habit. The first compression is going to take some time, but then afterwards it just does it on the fly, and
mhm.
it's totally worth it. Like it's amazing how many resources it saves you on this hosting side, but just like your customer not having to wait forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can do some compression before you even upload the image too, to make
That
sure that
too,
you're not uploading something that's way bigger than it needs to be.
100%.
All right. The second question, do you have a recommended WooCommerce search extension? I know the basic WordPress search is not good.
Right, and you're right. It's so. Um, so one that we use a lot is Elasticsearch, or
Mhm.
one that's gotten a lot better is Algolia. So that one's also really good for shopping. And that one, if you get into it, there's so many different levels you can do. Like if it's trying to recommend what people are searching, if it can adjust for spelling mistakes, but it's pretty cool. And your search might not have to be as important if you invest in some of the things like really good organization and like the subcategorization, because you'd be surprised a lot of people will use that if it's set up really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Again, another reminder of just like good organizational structure. And what does that look like on the back end? Like if you think about like tagging your articles and really setting up your product catalog in the proper way, what are some tips to do that?
Yeah, just categories, and how you'd organize them in categories and subcategories.
Yeah. I'm thinking of some like upsell opportunities on WooCommerce websites that we could talk about, because I think that there are so many strategies, and there are a lot of blogs out there that are great to follow for these strategies. I mean, Kinsta has some articles on it. The WooCommerce blog has like lots of great tips, but things like if you set a cart limit, like a minimum for free shipping, getting people to add things to their cart so that they reach that minimum, upsell opportunities with related products. What are some ways that we can get people to spend more on our websites?
Well, those are great ones, like you just said. I love the free amount, like a threshold amount for shipping, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm always a big fan of upsells, related products, and subscriptions. I mean, give insider discounts for subscriptions, and sign up just like Amazon Prime or anything along those lines. And
Mm-hmm.
good UX, all those other things we talked about. It's fast. Like if I have a positive experience, your customer service is good. That's what I'm going to remember, and then I want to come back. And it's all these things that kind of add up to my how I feel about you and your brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, are there any things that WooCommerce website owners should be paying attention to when it comes to like coupons and setting up extensions with coupons? Do you have any like favorite extensions for that? Do you have any warnings on how causing conflicts of any sort?
Yeah, coupons are important. Smart coupons is a popular extension. By default, WooCommerce does coupons pretty good. Um, but So that's generally what we use, and we did, and those are one of those things that you should be testing as well when you're doing kind of like your mock testing. Just enter some of the coupon codes and know what works for you
Yeah.
for this holiday season, and don't overstretch yourself. But I find by default WooCommerce handles discount or coupons quite well.
Yeah. I think it's also important to remember to set end dates for your coupons and expirations, because I don't know if you use the Honey app in your
I
Chrome
do.
extension to find
I do.
coupons. I use it almost every time, and it's surprising how many websites will have coupons from last year's Black Friday that still work, and things like that. So I mean, I love it for the discount, but I also think, man, that store owner doesn't know that those coupons are floating around on the internet.
Yeah, and so like one way you could set a limit, or or I just set a limit of how many times it can be used. But yeah, add that up to things that need to be done. Flash your coupons, make sure your site's ready, and that's a very good point.
Yeah. I mean, for anything, I'm wondering where, if someone's new to e-commerce and they are kind of overwhelmed with how all of these like trends change, right? And there's new ways of building your website and there's new extensions. How could your average website owner stay on top of all of these new trends and really be optimizing their website throughout the year?
I find like trends change in certain regards, but like a lot of things are steadfast and don't change. So like um pay attention. Like you can sign up for like WooCommerce newsletters or some of your popular like WooCommerce services like Kinsta, and they're always going to kind of let you know. Stay away from things that are super new, super trending, super popular, because they might not be tried and tested.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I always like to use verified plugins. Always want to make sure that my store is, fast. Like those things are never going to go away. Um, I think if anything, if you want to stay on top of trends, this was talked at WooSesh this year, but really like focus on the story behind your product, not just like
Mm-hmm.
here's a catalog, but take me through the story and why this product's important and how it's going to make my life better, and really just communicate your brand and what sets you apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of these new brands that are hitting the marketplace, you look at the product and it's nothing really groundbreaking. Nothing about their product is that new or different, but the marketing and the storytelling and the, kind of the brand that they've built around the product is really what's strong. And I kind of admire that because, a lot of effort goes into that marketing, but it's working.
And I love it. And I don't know about you, but for a lot of us, or especially millennials, like I have a bias towards like internet first brands. And you think about it from many perspectives. Like if you think about like Casper mattresses, or like we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about Away luggage, because like I know the online experience is going to be good. They have stores now, but like it's not going to be some janky thing where like if it's a company that like had a store and now they went online, like
Yeah.
you can order from like IKEA, for example. Sorry, IKEA, but like I'll buy something online, but it won't be in stock, or
Yeah.
like I'll go to the store and it's there. And it's not really cohesive. Whereas like when you started internet only, you've got like your distribution really figured out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, anyways, I love the internet companies. They hit me in all the right places. They hit me with all the right feels, and I just know that they're going to allow me to support me online as well. Like, there's nothing worse where it's like, oh, give us a call or come in person. Like, I don't want any of
Yeah.
that. Like, if I can text you, if I can hit you up on Facebook Messenger, like, I'm stoked.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that is okay. I'll go to a Q&A question first, but then I have a follow-up question about that. So here we got a question from Peter. Quick question about site architecture. Are you using or isolating the e-commerce store on a separate instance on Kinsta? If using single instance, for example, WooCommerce community feature, are you using business plan or enterprise plan?
Are you isolating e-commerce on a separate instance? Um, I'm wondering just like a separate instance, like if you're using like different sites for different things, like do you have like a a forum or something? Because generally like my my site is all in one. So I don't really understand the question.
I think
Um,
this is, yeah, a question more about, yeah, using Kinsta's plans and hosting your websites. So depending
oh, I see.
on,
What plan am I
yeah,
using? So
yeah,
I got you. It kind of depends on your needs. So, I mean, look at the breakdown, kind of how much traffic you get, kind of the load you're going to need. One thing that on Kinsta, pay attention to the PHP workers. Um, but it's really going to depend on your need, really, and the load that you require. Everyone's a bit different. And I mean, I know with Kinsta, before you sign up, you can talk to a rep and they'll take you through all the questions you need to know in order to pick the right plan.
yeah, that was going to be my follow up to that as well. Is if you're unsure how to use Kinsta's plans, where you should be in the different plan breakdown, hop on a sales chat with us. It's the best way to get your specific questions answered. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of chat, actually, so my follow-up question to our last little conversation was, should e-commerce websites have chats or some sort of feature where you can contact, maybe it's Facebook Messenger integration, contact someone from their company immediately?
Yeah, 100%. And it's not always about being immediate. Like the thing I've noticed is I like things to be asynchronous. Like I don't like to be on a phone because it means I need to stop and dedicate all my attention at that point in time. But what's great is like if I can send you a message on Facebook or WhatsApp or a text message, you can get back to me whenever, and then that gives me the convenience to keep the conversation going when it's right for me. And like I recently had an amazing experience. Like I've got a 6-month-old and we have Uppa baby products, and man, I love their customer experience because like I have their app, something broke on my stroller, and I sent them a message on the app. It goes through text message, and I was able to send them a picture of what happened, and like the next day they're like, oh, we're going to send you a new one. Can you send me your address? I texted them my address, and like within a day or two, I didn't have to dedicate a bunch of time to it. I solved my issue and it was sent to me. And then I had a follow-up question after it arrived. I said, oh, I need some instructions. And they said, no problem. And they send me a picture. And so I think the more you don't want to like flood yourself with too many like methods, but like have the modern methods. Like if you can, stay away from only just email or phone. Like everyone's on Facebook, like everyone uses text messaging. Like I love when those options are available.
Yeah, absolutely. And the option to, attach an image or a screenshot is also super helpful when you want to really communicate the issue that you're having and be super clear. So it's also just good practice for your own team, for your own people, because they're able to keep track and document maybe some of the feature requests or client inquiries and use that as they build up the support that they offer.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And so, I mean, and at the end of this all, like, I just want people to think like, think about your end game in mind. I know there's so many things we're talking about, but like, and you're going to learn. Nothing's going to be perfect. You're going to get that feedback. Just learn from it and start preparing for the next year. And you'll be okay. And I like to end like kind of vision, like focus on what the end should look like. And for me, Black Friday, this is definitely our busiest time of the year, but like, I like to imagine it with zero stress. Like literally all the systems are up and running, everything's in place. And it's, even though it's the most hardest time of the year, I want it to be in a way the easiest and most effortless time of the year because we've done all this preparation.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's like kind of flip the script here. Let's say for someone who builds e-commerce websites, now not someone who runs their own, but do you have any advice? Now this might not be for this year, but possibly for next year. If you're trying to break into the e-commerce website development industry and offer that maybe exclusively or on top of just regular websites, what advice do you have for someone who's like kind of trying to tap into that niche?
I always find like you got to find your niche. So don't try and do all things to all people. Like, we work on Shopify, WooCommerce, BigCommerce, like pick one. For example, we pick WooCommerce. And then even within that, like you can get even more focused. Like you can focus on learning management systems. You could focus on membership sites. And what happens when you do that is like, instead of spending a little bit of time on one platform, learning time on another one, you're spending all your time on this one, and you learn things that other people won't and they can't. And it makes you incredibly good at it. And that makes it easy for people to choose you and hire you because they know you know it better than anyone else.
Yeah. Is there anything people should know about pricing a WooCommerce project versus just a regular WordPress project?
There's definitely a lot more to it. You want to make sure that you scope things really well. I don't think it's available online, but I have done a talk on like 21 questions you need to do to scope a WooCommerce project. So really just prep as much as possible, like dot all your I's, cross your T's, and figure out all the different facets that they need so you're not shooting yourself in the foot, and then you also deliver a positive experience. But yeah, so there's a lot of moving parts. I would just say that, be prepared.
Yeah. Now, how long, I'm just curious, in your own experience, like from beginning to end, how long does it take you to build a WooCommerce website? I know that's like, it depends, is like, there's probably so many different factors, but just from, scoping it out, is there a ballpark that you know?
Well, this is the beauty of WordPress. There's a lot of things that are pre-made. So depending on your needs, like if you're not going to have, hundreds of thousands of visitors, like you don't need the super most high performance stuff. So you can take a lot of things off the shelf and you can have a store running in a couple of days. Like, I mean, a good week for like a really basic site with a couple of products, you can get it going. There might be a little of like time with like, admin type stuff, getting your payment processor up and running, but you could get it done in a week. And like, if you use like a freelancer, you can get it done for a few $1,000s. And then if you're like a much bigger retailer, I mean, those things take anywhere from 6 to 12 months, at least sometimes up to 18 months, because there's a lot of systems integration. It's a lot of testing. And those will be on a much bigger scale for pricing. But yeah, to get your foot in the door, you'd be surprised what you can do with some pre-made tools.
Yeah. So if someone is trying to specialize in WooCommerce, but their clients keep asking them for Shopify, what are some reasons why you've chosen to focus on WooCommerce and some of the benefits, and maybe some of the strengths of other systems as well?
Yeah, and like I don't like to set up a battle like one is better than the other. I think it's really just dependent upon your needs. Like if you are like if you really like to be hands-on, WooCommerce is definitely great. If for us, and what we find is like we just have a lot of our businesses who have very unique business requirements, and that requires very unique like setups. Like when you have something that's out of the box, it works for a lot of use cases, but it's not going to work for all. So every business is unique, and therefore your store should be unique. So that's why we use WooCommerce, and then it gives us a lot of control over our data, like how it comes in, how we send it out, and we can integrate it into like just a myriad of different services. And that's another reason why a lot of our customers use it versus something like a Shopify. But if you just need something out of the box, you don't really want to worry about like finding a developer team or any of that stuff. Shopify could be really great, and Shopify adds a lot of new stuff and services to their platform to make it really easy to sell. And I mean, at the end of the day, we all have shared missions. Like we just want to make it easy for people to sell and for entrepreneurs to succeed. So choose the one that's the right fit for you.
Yeah. WooCommerce really is hard to beat when it comes to the customizations. I mean, it's kind of like a box of crayons, and you could do whatever you needed to, and all the integrations. And I mean, I think that's true about the WordPress ecosystem in general. Is like there's a plugin for pretty much everything that you would need.
Yeah, and like it's so global. Like I meet people from Vietnam, and like it's already been translated there, so they get started on it right away, and that's really exciting. Whereas you might not have that with like a centralized business. You've got this global community that's really contributing, so it can adapt in really unique ways.
Yeah, very cool. What has been some of the most innovative projects that you've worked on related to e-commerce? And do you have any takeaways that you could share for maybe smaller businesses to medium businesses?
Yeah, one of my favorite sites I always talk about, it's a website we worked on called Flurn. It's like a video subscription service. So it's just like Netflix. You log in and you got all your streaming videos, but this one's focused on learning how to do Photoshop and photography. So that one was really fun because this was several years ago that we built it, and there were lots of stigmas around WooCommerce, and we really just like to prove like, no, this can literally do anything and everything. And some of the projects we're working on now, I really like because there's some very large brands, and I love seeing that they're entering this ecosystem, and just I love seeing WooCommerce move upstream because I think that's where it belongs. It's talking about platforms and stuff, like if you look at market share, a lot of people have never really heard of, it's not a pedestrian name to say WooCommerce like it is like more Shopify. A lot of people have heard WordPress, but like WooCommerce came later and it's got a larger market share. Like it's a very significant player in the space. And it's, I guess I'm talking to the old point and not the stores we've worked on. But for me, I think, especially as we're seeing now in our world, like there's a little bit more censorship or maybe a little bit less control, and there's more manipulation. I love that I can own the data and that I'm in control of it and I decide what it can do.
All right. Well, we're almost at the end of our webinar. And so I want to give you one last opportunity, Mitchell, to maybe share some words of encouragement for people who are coming into this, Black Friday, Cyber Monday season, hoping for the best.
Yeah, I mean, easy. It's so easy to get bogged down in the minutia. Being detail oriented. And so there's kind of a difference between being detail oriented and kind of getting trapped in the muck. So always just kind of keep big picture, keep focus on growing your business and really helping your customers, whatever that looks like. And maintain an eye for the finer points, because we could talk for days about all these small things you can do to optimize. So just keep the big picture in mind and never forget why you do what you do, and really just focus on satisfying your customers, and you'll things will all work out.
Awesome. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this last webinar of 2020 for Kinsta. Mitchell, again, thank you so much for joining us and for imparting so many words of wisdom, both practical and inspirational. And so for anyone who missed out on maybe some of our other webinars that Kinsta had this year, all of those are available for replay at kinsta.com/webinars. So you can check those out. We have some on Cloudflare integrations and on website optimization. Mitchell, again, thank you so much. And I wish you all the success with your own projects, and also very happy holiday season.
Hey, thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you for having me. It's been a blast, and I just want to say good luck to everyone. And if you need any help, just send me a note or whatever it takes. It's going to be a good time.
Very cool. Great. Well, bye everyone. Have a great rest of your day.